Without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce ourselves. So my name is Elena Gergimova. I'm a partner at Bestern, and I come from a corporate background. Who I'm really excited to introduce to you guys is Erin Lee. She's a mindfulness-based, she's a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, as recognized by the Mindfulness-Based Professional Training Institute at the University of California, San Diego Center for Mindfulness. She has completed the UCSD School of Medicine Mindfulness training program, essentially, and she conducts mindfulness trainings for corporate clients and organizations in both English and Chinese, and also an experienced polytechnic lecturer. And of course, we have my business partner, Yvonne, who's also going to be joining us on this session. And if you guys can just go ahead and come on camera at this time. There we go. Welcome, welcome. All right. Super excited to have you here, Erin. Yvonne, always a pleasure to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Same here.
All right, so let us go ahead and just dive right into it. So let's start with just the sort of basics. So we understand, right? We understand about mindfulness. And if those of you on this webinar who were skeptics like myself, who recently got into mindfulness and meditation, and before I would be wondering, well, is there really science behind it, or is it all kind of just that make you feel good feeling? But what is the actual science behind it? So talk to us a little bit about what is the science behind mindfulness, Erin?
Well, when I first started practicing mindfulness, or even before I started, I used to think that it was supposed to be this very relaxing thing, and it's going to just, wash away all my stress when I first start to practice it. But then when I really went deep into the practice, I realized it was not the case. And really, there is a lot of hard work to be put into it. And I would distill the science behind mindfulness from my perspective and experience working with people. It's a lot about attention, and it's about how we pay attention and what we pay attention to. So, for example, when we talk about stresses at the workplace, when we're faced with stress, do we know that we're stressed? Right? Where is our attention? A lot of times when we're facing stress in the workplace, we may tend to distract ourselves with other some behaviors that may not be very constructive for us. So our attention is on something that's not helpful for us, right? So we're not used to observing our state of mind and body that way. So in this case, when we apply mindfulness, the science of mindfulness behind it is really to be aware, to notice where your attention is placed at any time. When we are stressed, do we know that we are stressed? When we are having negative thoughts about our work, our environment, our relationships with colleagues, are we aware of that? Are we aware of what consequences or what is the impacts of these thoughts and emotions may be on our well-being?
Erin, I would like to build a little bit more on what you share with us, which is quite insightful. It relates to me so much with the personal experience that I have got in corporate, where I have been working during 15 years, and to understand, in fact, the management of stress has been like a constant struggle for so many years, and the misunderstanding of what there is behind mindfulness has been so broad for me. So it was almost like that was the thing that was preventing me to go and jump and do something about the management of my stress. Now, from the research or science-based, it took me a while to understand that there is a big correlation with the brain. And perhaps the most interesting research on mindfulness are the studies that are showing how mindfulness changes our brain through what we call neuroplasticity, or the fact that we are continuously rewiring the brain, learning continuously. So there was a research after an 8-week mindfulness practice in a group. Some MRI scans show that the brain, or that inside of the brain, in the stress center, the amygdala, this part of the brain seemed to shrink. In fact, as the amygdala was shrinking, the prefrontal cortex became bigger. This is the area, in fact, where of the brain that is linked to awareness, concentration, and decision making. Exactly what you mentioned. So the brain is therefore being rewired to be less reactive to stress. I wish I had this information back then, by the way. There is another study also that found that patients who underwent mindfulness training were less emotionally reactive, because at the end, stress, everybody will have it. You cannot prevent from feeling it. It's about how you process it. And that's the key. So there was these people who were less emotionally reactive, and therefore they experienced reduced symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression. This was basically because mindfulness led to increased activity in the brain regions associated with emotional regulation. And I think this is one of the key words that we have to keep in mind. And we are a little bit far away from the stories about yoga mats that we always discussing with Elena. I think mindfulness, there is a wealth of things that is not officially recognized by the bigger population. And corporations are just tapping a little bit into the curiosity of what does it mean? Is it something mystic? Is there science behind? And can it give us the return on investment?
Erin, I really loved your point as well about, mindfulness is our ability to sort of just pay attention. And as Yvonne mentioned, it has such a huge impact on our brains, essentially. And I think this is what we struggle with so much, is to take a moment and recognize what we're dealing with, what we're feeling, right? So then it will hopefully prevent that following a response to whatever we're experiencing. So I think that's such an important point there. And so let's look at also, if we're related in the context of corporate or the world of work, why is it mindfulness important for corporations and the future of work? How does it impact our maybe productivity, our well-being at work?
So from my experience from the past few years, I see more and more companies and organizations coming to me asking for mindfulness training. And I ask them, what kind of objectives they would like to achieve. And usually they would want to help their employees improve their well-being. So I think there is an overall recognition and an acknowledgement that the well-being of employees, of staff in general, whether it's physical or mental well-being, has an impact, direct or indirect, on their effectiveness at work, their productivity, their ability to focus, and the ability to, like what Yvonne shared, emotional regulation. And so mindfulness in this sense is really important in the future of work, especially when we are facing more and more changes in, they call it the VUCA world, so many changes that we need to adapt to, so many uncertainties with, for example, the COVID situation right now. We see a lot of people getting very anxious about what the future may look like for them. So in this sense, mindfulness can actually come in not just to help employees on an individual level to, for example, manage their level of focus and productivity in a distraction-filled environment, but also know how to manage stress and to build resilience in face of these adversities.
There are many cases, in fact, where we see the impact of mindfulness in the workplace. For instance, it comes to my mind the example of Intel, which began offering a mindfulness program to more than 100,000 employees back then in 2012. Since then, in fact, the participants have reported that decrease in stress, less overwhelming, less feeling of being overwhelmed, an increase in the overall happiness and well-being, and an increase in new ideas. So creativity is part of one of the big outcomes of in mindfulness. Also the case of SAP, who has been using mindfulness training for more than 6,000 employees that have completed the courses, and they have internal mindfulness trainers after offering guided meditations during working hours. So participants have reported increased well-being and higher creativity. What's more, in fact, SAP has found that mindfulness increased employee engagement and trust in leadership, which is one of the key challenges that, in fact, human resources is having right now. You mentioned the VUCA wall. There is the VUCA wall, and then at the same time, there is so much talking about transforming the business models, working in different ways, having different ways of learning at work, and VUCA plus transformation, that makes a lot of things to digest for the single employee.
Yvonne, can I just interrupt? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We seem to have a difficulty on the participant side, so there's a big echo coming. Okay, so is it better now, guys? Sorry, we had a few people saying that they can hear, so I just wanted to pause. So yeah, okay, so all okay now, I think, majority of us? Okay, good, so it's better now, all right. Yes.
So maybe the echo was coming from my side because I could hear myself also in the echo. Is
okay,
it
yeah, it's better
okay?
now.
Is it good now?
Yeah, it's better now, yes. Okay, awesome. Keep going. Sorry to interrupt you.
I'm so sorry. And just maybe one last example that comes to my mind of something that we have been a little bit learning from Elena and myself in our practice with Besson, is that we got hand of a study done by a big insurer called Aetna, which was offering a mindfulness program to their employees, and found that the healthcare cost was reduced by 7% in the first year. That was completely amazing. They determined that their productivity gains allow them to save approximately $3,000 per employee per year. So the return on investment was of 11 to 1. So these mindfulness programs paid off, in fact. They were so happy about it that they started also offering mindfulness trainings to their customers, to the corporate customers of Aetna, this global insurer. So I think that there is, and Erin, I think that you mentioned it quite nicely, that the fact that it's not about well-being, like mental well-being as such is not such an interesting thing to measure for corporations, but the outcome, in terms of productivity, in terms of being more present at work, is something that it is easily quantifiable by corporations nowadays.
You know, you bring such an important point, Yvonne, and I'm curious for you guys who are joining us this afternoon. Tell us a bit about, you know, maybe if anybody wants to drop us in the chat box. I'm just curious, are your companies doing anything within the space of mindfulness? Are they looking to implement, are these sort of topics being covered in your organizations? Do you think it's something that would be interested to an organization like yours, for example? And while you guys are dropping those comments and also any questions you may have, I wanted to also ask Erin, so you work within the space. First of all, I have to say that I am completely impressed that there's a whole study, there's a whole master's degree that has to do with mindfulness and application of it in the workplace. I mean, that is brilliant. And with your work and your background, you do a lot of work with individuals, but also companies. So if we were to put it in practice, what are some strategies that companies can implement? So Yvonne gave us a few examples of what some impact, but what are the strategies that a company, or when you work with your clients, I'm just curious, what are some strategies that where companies can start using mindfulness?
So over here in Singapore, we do see more and more companies requesting for mindfulness training. And I would say over the past few years, there's an increase, although the kind of training that they're asking for so far has remained at more of an introductory level. And this is especially so when the awareness towards mindfulness and the science behind mindfulness, the benefits of mindfulness, is still relatively limited and new to most the workforce out there. So the management at this point, they are looking to get buy-in from their employees by, for example, so I would go to organizations to conduct talks and seminars and workshops as an introductory level. And if they find that it is helpful for them, they may deepen the strategy and ask for multiple sessions or longer term mindfulness trainings. So a formal training is in the works. It is important to be able to allow the staff to structurally and formally learn the skills of mindfulness and how to practice it effectively. So this is definitely very important for bringing mindfulness into the workplace. And this is one of the first steps that we take. And I also, at the same time, tell the companies that it is not enough to just do formal trainings, because a lot of times mindfulness is a way of life. It is not a tool that people learn and people have, and when in times of stress, in times of difficulty, you sort of take out the hammer and just hammer the stress down. It doesn't work like that. It is a skill of the mind and the body, and it is essentially an attentional skill. So we have to see it that way instead of a tool. So in order to make it a skill and as a way of life, we have to find ways to help the company integrate it into the organizational the culture, the workplace culture, their day-to-day routines, their day-to-day interactions. And this will require teachers or trainers to be able to work closely with the company to see how we could adapt this to the unique culture of the company itself. Yeah.
Erin, is it something that can be, mindfulness can be deployed as a trainer for internal trainers inside of a corporation, a little bit like the example of Aetna, or is it a little bit too much, too difficult?
It's definitely doable, and I would say that this would be an ideal strategy, provided that there are there is a pool of people who are willing to be trained to deliver this mindfulness training to their colleagues, to their coworkers. One tricky thing is that we have to ensure that employees buy into the science and the benefits. They understand what they're going into, instead of just seeing this as, you know, another some goal, some objective they have to achieve, and they're just going through the motions of it. So in order to become a trainer in mindfulness and just to train your peers at the workplace, they themselves would have to practice mindfulness and to embody that practice somehow. So this process will, of course, take time. It takes time for such a pool of people to emerge.
Is it easier, in fact, for a corporation to to combine trainings with, let's say, mindfulness coaches, and even now with technology in order to support the journey of employees?
Yes, you mentioned technology. So this is a very helpful way. So on top of, so we can actually pull together different resources. So your trainer, your formal trainers and coaches would be one resource. And of course, to help employees sustain it on a day-to-day basis, then that's where technology can come in. For example, using mindfulness apps to have them practice every day. So that's one. And if we're talking about some other resources, I think it's really important for organizations to set up certain rituals within the company itself. So it may not bode well, or it may not be very effective if you were to just subscribe to a mindfulness app for the entire company and say, go practice, right? So we need to be able to motivate them and make this as a community thing. So the best way I would see this is to create some kind of ritual that people can get into, sort of like a routine. One of the more popular ways is, you know, before and after meetings, we have short practices as the whole team together. At the start of the workday, we can have the whole company just get together, or during town halls, just get together and have practices together. And all the better if this were done on a daily basis, because that's where we slowly build the skill and the culture.
So it looks to me, Erin, that combining, in fact, technology, group sessions, individual sessions, allowing certain employees of the corporation to also to be in charge, to be kind of coaches. We can effectively have a cost-effective solution, in fact, to implement mindfulness in a corporation. It doesn't have to be like super duper an expensive exercise, right?
Yes, and I agree with that, and I also want to point out that so I was referring a lot to sort of like the soft infrastructure of organizations in terms of culture, in terms of interactions and communications, and what could be helpful. And I think maybe not a lot of companies are looking into this right now. Perhaps maybe there's a limit to resources. Is the built environment or the hard infrastructure of the office space or the workplace. So yes, so granted we are all working from home now, but if we look at the office space itself, do we have that space or the conducive environment for employees to practice mindfulness as and when they need to, not just as a group but individually? So there are companies out there are co-working spaces, for example, that have dedicated mindfulness spaces just for people to go in there and practice. And it doesn't have to be something very elaborate and very costly, very expensive. It can just be a dedication of a simple room just to let people know, oh, this space can be intentionally used for mindfulness practice. I think this kind of considerations would be very helpful as well.
That's brilliant. And so it sounds like that there's two responsible parties here. On one side, we have the companies who are then can provide it and in an affordable and accessible way for all employees with the use of technology. And on the other side, there's the individual side that we actually need to have that buy-in from the employees themselves and actually practice it and see the value of it. And I like the point that you mentioned that it's something that it's a lifestyle that you practice. It's not like when you come into work, you turn on this mindfulness switch and all of a sudden you're mindful, right? So it's a process. And there's a saying I heard that it says it's a process, and the process takes time, as all processes. So, yeah. And we also have a couple of comments. Somebody said definitely it will help us in creating workplaces with more empathy and focus on employee happiness. Some people also mentioned that not yet. They have tried employee engagement programs, but was not followed up with the leadership, which is always a challenge, right? And somebody else mentioned that yes, in previous company there was a program around mindfulness, and this individual would like to have it in their current organization as well. So I think we all quite agree that it is important, and it is something that has essentially an impact on our work and the company growth and the business growth. So now that we've sort of we understand the idea about mindfulness, but how do we as individuals actually do it? And I know you have a nice little practice for us to do for our audience today. So shall we do the practice?
Yes, of course, I would love to. But before I start, maybe I could just explain a little bit more about the science or the intentions behind the practice, just so that we know what we are getting into. I'm going to bring you through sort of like a short grounding practice in a standing posture. So now, why a standing posture? Because a lot of times when we see the word mindfulness or maybe meditation, we tend to think, oh, you have to sit on the floor, cross-legged, and you're just still with your eyes closed all the time. But I mentioned also mindfulness is a way of life. It is a skill that you build. So ideally, when we practice it, if we want the practice to be effective for us, if we want to effectively develop the skill, this practice has to happen at any moment, at any time in our waking consciousness. So as long as we're awake, we can practice mindfulness, and we don't have to stop everything that we do to practice mindfulness. As and when we go about our day-to-day routines, think about when you're having your meals, your breakfast in the morning, when you're having your first cup of coffee. Are you paying attention? Are you paying mindful attention? When you are doing self-care routines like brushing your teeth, when you're commuting from work to home, when you're interacting with your colleagues, you're seated down in the meeting room, you're standing up, talking to people, making presentations, different postures, we can practice mindfulness. So it doesn't always have to be seated cross-legged on the floor, right? So when we practice mindfulness this way, we are essentially training the brain. So there is neuroplasticity involved. We're training the brain to focus in on the present moment, and it's not just a practice of focus. It is also very importantly a practice of observation. So we are learning to be aware and observe the state of our mind, the state of our body, and being able to just acknowledge what is here without having to struggle too much with what is here. So we're going to practice just a short few minutes of that in the standing posture.
Sounds good. This is one of those moments, the CNN, they said, make sure if you stand up, you're not wearing boxers or something. So all of you there on our webinars, you're wearing proper pants.
Yes, that's very important.
So do we stand up?
Okay.
Or what do we do?
Yes, so I'm going to demonstrate right now. So you can stand up wherever you are, and you don't actually have to stand too far away. I'm going to do that. I'm going to stand further away so you can see almost my entire body. But wherever you are, you can just stay where you are. Just ensure that you can hear me clearly. Okay, you don't need a lot of space for this. So I hope everyone will join me in this practice. All right. So knowing that the intention of this practice is simply to just be with yourself one moment at a time, just noticing what is happening, what is going on. And we will find some grounding, all right, by way of paying attention, okay? So let's begin with a stable standing posture. So we want to ensure that our feet are about hip distance apart, feet flat on the floor, and we're standing up straight and tall, all right? So keeping the spine straight, but not too stiff. So relaxing the shoulders, arms hanging down the sides of the body, fingers loose and relaxed. Okay. So for a start, I'd like to invite you to gently close your eyes. If you don't want to close your eyes, you can just lower your gaze down to the floor in front of you. So getting a sense of this body in this standing posture. Becoming aware of the space, the air around the body in contact with the skin. So just noticing what is present in the body right now. What sensations are here? Is there a sense of temperature? Maybe you're noticing coolness or warmth. Maybe a sense of weight in the body, heaviness or lightness. Maybe there are areas of tension, pressure, tightness. So whatever that is present in the body, we're not looking to change anything about this experience. We're just allowing the body to be just the way it is. Right. So now when you're ready, I'd like to invite you to open your eyes. All right. So you don't have to look at the screen at me, but you can just listen out for the instructions. I'm going to guide you through some very simple balancing movements. And I'd like for you to keep yourself safe and really work well within your limits, not pushing yourself too hard, knowing that intention is to just notice the body one moment at a time. Okay. So when you're ready, I'd like to invite you to take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in, bringing the shoulders up to the ears, and breathing out, bringing the shoulders back down. One more time, breathing in, bringing the shoulders up. Breathing out, bringing the shoulders back down. And one more time, breathing in, shoulders going up. Breathing out, shoulders coming all the way back down. And then when you're ready, I'd like to invite you to drop your attention all the way down to the bottoms of the feet. So now getting a sense of the bottoms of the feet in contact with the floor. Maybe you're able to trace the outlines of the feet, the bottoms of the feet from the ball of the feet to the arch, to the heel. And noticing how the body weight is resting on both the feet at this moment. Noticing the pressure under the feet. All right, so now when you're ready, very gently and very slowly, we're going to shift our body weight to the left, keeping the feet on the floor, but shifting the body weight to your left. So the bulk of the body weight is now resting on the left leg. So inviting a lot of curiosity to the body at this moment. Is there a difference between your left foot and your right foot? Okay, and very gently, we're going to shift back to center. And now we're going to shift to the right. The body weight is now resting on the right leg. Noticing the body one moment at a time. And shifting back to center. And now keeping yourself safe, very gently, we're going to shift our body weight to the front, keeping your heels on the floor, but just resting your body weight forward so that the body weight is resting on the toes and the front of the feet. Just notice what that feels like. All right, and gently coming back to center. And now keeping yourself safe, we're going to shift the body weight to the back, keeping your toes on the floor, but shifting the body weight to the back and resting here for a few moments, holding this posture and becoming really curious about the body. Which parts of the body are engaged? Which parts of the body are more relaxed? All right, and when you're ready, we're going to shift back to center. Okay, coming back to our stable standing posture. And now once again, we're going to shift the body weight to the left, keeping our attention on the entire body, noticing the body in movement. Now, finding your balance, we're going to very gently lift up the right leg in front of us. All right, keeping yourself safe, we're just going to lift the right leg up, lifting it to a height that feels comfortable for you. So it doesn't have to be too high up. All right. If you feel this to be safer, you can rest your tiptoes on the floor. All right. Noticing the body in this balancing posture. You can hold up your arms for a little bit more support. So just noticing, how is the body balancing itself? All right. So now, without lowering the right leg back down, we're going to swing the right leg over to the right, swinging it to the right, and noticing how the upper body is now leaning slightly to the left, just to keep itself in balance. So it's kind of like you're paying attention to your body this way for the very first time. And now we're going to swing the right leg to the back and notice how the upper body is now leaning slightly forward to keep itself in balance. So this can feel a little playful, like a child discovering the body for the first time. Okay, so now very safely, we're going to bring our leg back down and we're going to come back to our stable standing posture. Okay, we're going to do the other side. So shifting the body weight to the right, finding a balance, we're going to lift the left leg back up in front of us, balancing on the right leg, noticing what the body feels like. Maybe you're noticing some gentle swaying back and forth, some subtle trembling movements. And very gently, we're going to swing the left leg over to the left, noticing the body shifting to the right to keep itself in balance. Really inviting curiosity, a very gentle kind of curiosity to the body, and swinging the left leg to the back, leaning the upper body forward, noticing how the body is keeping itself in balance. One moment at a time, just noticing the body. And very gently, we're going to bring the leg back, coming back to our stable standing posture. All right, so bringing the body back to stillness. And once again, we're going to allow the eyes to close, or we're going to lower the gaze down to the floor in front of us. Inviting the awareness to the body now. What is present in the body at this moment? One moment at a time, getting to know this body. What sensations are present? Noticing the quality of the breath. Paying attention to the body breathing in and breathing out. So inviting curiosity now to where you best sense the breath in the body. On which part of the body do you best feel the sensations of breathing? Perhaps at the nose area? Or maybe movements of the breath at the shoulders, the chest, or the belly? Allowing the breath to be natural. Following the natural rhythms of the breath. Knowing every moment of each inhalation, every moment of each exhalation. Now at this moment, you may notice your mind's attention has wandered away to think about something else. That's perfectly normal. And all you need to do is to invite your attention back once again to the breath in the body. Once again, noticing the body breathing in, breathing out. There is nothing you need to do to the breath. Just simply know that the body is breathing. So as you breathe in, just know that you're breathing in. As you breathe out, simply know that you're breathing out. Attending to one breath at a time. And now when you're ready, I'd like to invite you to take a deep breath in and bringing the shoulders up to the ears again, and breathing out, bringing the shoulders back down. One more time, breathing in, shoulders going up. Breathing out, shoulders coming back down. And one more time, breathing in, shoulders up. Breathing out, shoulders coming all the way back down, returning the breath to normal and allowing the eyes to open or widen. Okay, so this is our practice, and I'd like to invite us to come back to our chairs.
Is everybody still awake?
I hope so.
I was gonna take a nap in the middle of it, standing up. You know, the good news is everybody's still with us. That's good. You know, and
That's
had a
great.
couple of people that logged in, and they're probably like, "What is happening on this session?" And if somebody logged in the middle of it, I see it pop up. Anyway, how do you guys feel? Yvonne, I saw you were cheating a little bit with the wall.
I was trying not to touch the wall, in fact. Erin, something that was coming to my mind while I was doing it is, so what exactly is happening in our brain while we are paying attention to our breathing, when we are having the notion of identifying, to be aware of our body? What is exactly happening in the brain?
Okay, so maybe I could answer this by throwing it back to you, during your experience just now, what was happening? I mean, we can't read the brain without tools, right? But maybe in your mind, what's happening in the mind as you were engaging in the practice?
So for me specifically, it was more, there was 1/3 of the practice where my brain was deloading. There was no worry. There was just, everything was outside, because I was trying to focus on either my breathing or either not falling into the floor because I was standing with one foot. So it was like there was nothing pressurizing my brain. There was, for a moment, there was no thought that was bothering me.
Okay, all right. And what about the rest of the time?
There was a little bit of, because I'm very unbalanced as a person, so I was scared of falling. So there was a little bit of fear of falling during 1/3 of the time, probably, because what if I fall?
Yes, right. So you had thoughts coming in, right? Wondering if you were going to fall off or lose your balance. So there are a few elements in the practice here, and I'm going to explain why we practice it this way. In our lifestyle nowadays, the way that we live our lives, we don't pay enough attention to ourselves. And it's essentially the bulk of our problems come from within, right? The way that we react to stress, the way that we respond to stress, it all comes from within. But we are so used to the kind of life where we throw our attention outward. So we look out for things outside of us. One good example is the phone, right? So our attention is thrown onto the phone all the time. So we're sort of losing touch with what is happening here, either in the body or in the mind. So with any mindfulness practice, we are essentially first and foremost learning to observe ourselves and to pay close, gentle attention to ourselves to know what is happening. So it's great just now when you notice that you had thoughts of fear, of falling off balance. So you notice you were aware that there were thoughts coming in. So this is always the first step to mindfulness. And then we talk about different skills altogether. In mindfulness skill, one key skill is the ability to anchor and to sustain your attention. So when we engage in movements like that, you realize that you were free from worries because your mind was not wandering off to think about something else that may be bothering you. And you're just returning your attention over and over again to this body, right? Or to the breath. Just now when we were watching our breath for some time, it's a practice in stillness, and we may notice that our body is entirely still, but the mind could be like a monkey mind. It's all over the place. It's thinking about work. It's thinking about when this is going to end. So essentially, there's an element of focus and concentration. Each time we learn to bring the attention back to the body and to the breath, we are changing, we're shifting the neurology in the brain one bit at a time. So this is how we train the brain. So that's one. Second skill that we're learning in mindfulness is the skill of observation. And when we talk about observation, it is a kind of attending to ourselves without judgment, right? So if we notice negative thoughts coming in, worrying thoughts coming in, we don't feel frustrated about it. We simply observe a thought as a thought. When we observe difficulties in the body, we just observe difficulties or pain as pain. We learn to observe and create a safe space with it, knowing what's happening, but creating a space so that we don't react to that. So these are the two skills that we are essentially practice with any mindfulness practice out there. And the quality of the skill that we develop depends on what kind of practice you're going into and the length and the quality of the practice as well.
So I guess that if I am an employee and my corporation is not offering any type of trainings on mindfulness, this could be the beginning of my journey. So devoting 5 minutes per day to do exactly what you did today. And this is something that where the returns within a couple of days, we can see them with the management of our stress and so on. Is that correct? Is there something that you would help, in fact, in the journey, or do we start with this and that could be a good start?
So the key thing is that when it comes to mindfulness, it all boils down to a personal practice. Nobody can practice it for you, right? Because this is a skill that you have to pick up on your own. So for a start, it is really important for each individual to be able to start that practice. That's the most important thing. So for a start, I would say that I would rather you go for consistency over duration. So I would rather that you practice 10 minutes a day as opposed to 1 hour per week or 1 hour per month. All right, because that's when you build the skill. So a little bit every day, and this is where some of the resources can come in. So your meditation apps, your mindfulness apps can come in. There are so many resources online for you to watch and to follow the guidance to on the videos and audios. And you can even do this on the collective level. So if the company wants to do a company-wide thing or a team-based thing, you can also do that together. I think it helps with the element of motivation when we do this in a community. Yeah.
I love what you say. It is a matter of consistency indeed. As usual, it's not about intensity, and this is the first thing that we can already get as a treasure out of this seminar. On top of understanding what is the science behind mindfulness, it is that we can start as of now. There is nothing preventing us. Everybody has 5 minutes spared for that.
Yes.
Absolutely. And at this time, I'd like to open up if you guys have any questions. And while you drop us the questions, make sure that you definitely check out Erin's Instagram and her website, the things that she's doing. Erin, anything else? Any programs you have coming up you want to that might be interesting for our audience? Anything you want to share with us?
So I would like to invite you to join me if the time if the time allows. I have a free community practice every Sunday evening Singapore time at 9 p.m. It's called Take a Pause. So if this time works for you and it's a free community thing, we're doing it over Zoom, you can feel free to join me. Otherwise, if you'd like to know more about mindfulness, the programs that I do, or any questions that you have, feel free to connect with me, perhaps on LinkedIn. That will be the best way to get in touch with me. Yes.
Great. Yeah, Sunday session looks interesting. Actually, we might join you as well. That sounds good.
Oh, great. That's great.
So it's 5 p.m. UAE time would be, yeah, it's good.
Which is okay.
Yeah, so you guys, if you have any questions, share your experience, or if you would like to share how you felt. For me, thank you so much, Erin. I definitely can relate to the fact that when you're making sure that you're not falling down, you don't really think about anything else. So it sort of distracted my brain from the other things we have happening today, for example. So it definitely seen impact. Would love to hear from our audience. How did you guys feel? Any questions? Yes, we will share the recording, guys, so you'll get the recording. The Instagram, it's right there. So somebody asked about your Instagram. So Instagram, it's at Erin Mindfulness Moments. So it's right there on the screen. You should see it. And they're saying, thank you for the nice session. The practice was good.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, you guys will be receiving the recording about 24 hours after the session, so not to worry. You can practice it as well. Continue practicing it. Wonderful.
While we're waiting for some questions, I just, out of curiosity, so there is always this big debate of understanding of how much mindfulness has impacted a given culture. So and I know that you are operating globally, so is there any difference in terms of the adoption of mindfulness between, I don't know, Westerners, Middle Eastern, and Asians? Is it more associated to the Asian culture, or is it just a big urban legend?
Well, so my work has primarily been in Singapore. I've done some global work, but bulk of my experience is in Singapore. And we have Eastern backgrounds, Eastern cultures, and we do know there is awareness that mindfulness does have some links back to certain spiritual practices or traditions or Eastern traditions. But that said, because mindfulness is something that is being applied as a very scientific discipline, as an entirely secular discipline right now. So I would say that it is still quite new to people in Singapore, and so they may have an idea of it, but they may not have been practicing it, even with if they come from certain cultural backgrounds or certain faiths. So I find that it's still there's still a long way to go in terms of making this really a way of life over here.
Thank you, Erin.
Somebody else mentioned that they think mindfulness now is where emotional intelligence was 5 years ago. Absolutely. And it will be the next best thing because it enhances emotional intelligence. So wonderful job. And for one of the participants also, it has given them a greater understanding of mindfulness itself. And for me as well, personally. So absolutely. Yeah, I do see opportunities within the mindfulness space coming up. Absolutely. Especially with what's happened in the COVID situation. I think it got us all a little bit grounded and how can we better pay attention to what's happening around us? How can we be present essentially and take care of our well-being? Wonderful. So unless there's any other questions or comments, I think from our side, that's it. Erin, from our side, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
For the audience, you guys, thank you for, again, being with us. Stay in touch with us, of course. Stay in touch with Erin. Yvonne, always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you very much. Erin, it was lovely to have you. And really, I have learned a lot today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Erin, I've learned a lot from you too. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Elena. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you.